Two buttons. Joe is not here. Oh, I haven't heard that. I don't know. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, next one. So let's hope he
There is a
feels
health thing going on. Okay. All right. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to this special meeting of the Truckee Downer Public Utility District. It is 6:01, Wednesday, November 20th. Sarah, could we have roll call, please?
Director Harris. Director Laliotis.
Here.
Vice President Finn.
Here.
President Bender.
Here.
The record will note Director Aguirre is absent.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Pledge of Allegiance. Would you like to lead us? Just been looking right on.
I know. Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Thank you. Number 4, any changes to the agenda tonight?
There are no changes this evening.
Okay. All right, public comment. Anytime any member of the public can step up and address the board on any matter not on the agenda tonight. Is there public comment tonight on any matter not on the agenda? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment. And director updates.
I got a quick one. Just my usual thank you to all the employees for all the hard work that they do. And, I know, especially now with the snow starting to fly out there, that it is always, fun and challenging times. But we have great crews and great staff that helps us with keeping our lights on and our water flowing and our bills paid and bills collected for that matter. So, thank you.
Great, thanks. Any updates?
Ditto, but I also want to thank staff for their great communication over the last 24 to 36 hours with regard to the PSOM event. I think, compared to Liberty, you guys did a much better job of communicating the status of that and the likelihood of that, and then following up. So I want to thank staff for that. And I think it's it was very appropriate. I didn't see next door blow up, which meant people were getting the message clearly. So I think that's great. I'm glad it didn't happen, but I know we were ready, and I appreciate the staff's communication to make sure our customers are ready. And I apologize for not attending the last board meeting, but I also just want to thank and congratulate everyone who ran on the TDPUD ticket this year, and I know the results are still trickling in, so hopefully we'll get some results, but I feel good about at least Jeff Bender.
And they are trickling in.
And the current status of his votes. But anyway, I know what it takes to run a campaign, and I do appreciate everyone putting their name in the hat this year.
Great. Thanks, Tony. All right. Go for it.
Ditto all of those sentiments, and yay, no PSOM. That's awesome. I did attend 2 pertinent meetings this week, one with the Climate Transformation Alliance, our subcommittee formation kickoff. So we are forming subcommittees to help us, to sort of help spread out the lift of keeping that organization moving forward and focused on programming. I also attended a meeting today that was co-sponsored by the Citizens Climate Lobby and the Climate Transformation Alliance about community-driven thermal energy networks. And I have to say, it was fascinating and interesting and inspiring and hopeful. So I look forward to sharing that information with staff, and they can rein me in and tell me, help me become a little more rounded collector of knowledge, and share that with my fellow board members sometime in the future at an appropriate moment. And finally, I just want to take a moment to actually apologize to staff for not doing my job as well as you do yours, in particular, our financial and accounting departments. These folks are experienced, meticulous, and ethical. And over the past several years, under the leadership of our CFO, Mike Salmon, we have seen continuous improvement in all of our processes and have been awarded the highest transparency rating by the Government Accountability Office. This requires going well above and beyond the legal reporting standards. Moss Adams performs an annual audit for us, and every year, as part of their service, they identify particular areas to stress test. And they share this focus in a letter to the board, pre-audit. Somehow, Director Harris interpreted that as a result, not as a preview. And I fully expect us to pass our audit with the usual high level of clarity and compliance, setting the bar for excellence in our region. So these types of unsubstantiated, sort of outrageous statements undermine our staff, and it affects the morale of the entire district. So there's really no place for that on this board, and I look forward to turning the page on the politics of personal grievance and revenge and returning our focus back to cooperative and collaborative governance. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm going to have to answer that.
Please do.
The
Feel free.
comment that I had last meeting, it is a pre-audit letter, an engagement letter, where they do focus on items of interest. And I wanted to share with the board that I had questions about it, and I spoke with Moss Adams, and they were able to answer these questions. So absolutely, it's something that they do look at. It was never the way that you interpret how I communicate that I had a good conversation with an auditor into you're bringing this up because I'm being malicious or however, is just, in my opinion, mean. When I try to bring up something of importance that I want to share, and it gets turned into a potential violation of my severance agreement, and then now I'm told that I think that the accounting department is not competent. That's not it. I have worked with the accounting department. Moss Adams has been there for several years, where I feel like the ball was not communicated well with me, that I was trying to give the future board members an identified item to look out for, is the pre-audit letter. I got two. I got one 2 months after I got on the board, and I got the second one 2 months before I'm about ready to leave the board. The pre-audit letter should be coming to the board members every single year. And so just to ensure that there is communication there, just keep an eye out for it, future board members and current board members. It's something that is worthy of a communication, and I had questions about it. I was a former auditor. I understand these things, and I had a great conversation with Keith. So I'm sorry that you're misinterpreting my question of this pre-audit letter into, I don't think the accounting department does their job right. Like that, in my opinion, is just, I'm just at a loss.
Well, I think a
don't know.
lot of us, I fully and wholeheartedly agree with Krista and how I have my notes here from the last meeting, and it's just, Moss Adams, there was a lack of communication there with you getting that, and I wrote here in all caps with stars, undermining management. And there absolutely was a better way to present your concerns and findings without undermining management. So how you presented it last time, I truly believe, in my opinion, that you totally undermined management with your comment and statement last board meeting. And with what
And I just- yeah,
Krista
'cause I can
said is, I
clarify.
really appreciate what you just said, because each and every one of all the staff here in the audience tonight, we appreciate you. You guys are rocking it. You, ladies and gentlemen of the Truckee Donner PUD, thank you. You're doing a really good job. And in no way do we agree with how you made your statement last time, because it really did come out wrong.
And it wasn't the statement about you not receiving the communications in a timely fashion. You continued on that to claim that some of our staff were inexperienced and they were not used to doing government work, and that is simply untrue. So that was what I was more referring to, not so much your communications with Moss Adams.
That that I said that it was early in Brian's GM career?
Actually, it was specific.
Or that Mike, is this the first government job that you've had, Mike?
This is not an open forum with the
Yeah.
staff right now. Thank you.
So that's what I took exception to.
Well, okay.
I'm going to offer my 2 cents because I watched that part of the meeting and I did feel like it was a dig towards staff. And it came off in my opinion, inappropriately. And that's how I just perceived it. I wasn't here. I did watch it. And I watched it on my own. I wasn't prompted by anybody. I just wanted to watch the meeting. And it took me back when I watched it. And it felt like it was a dig toward staff. And it had a purpose. And I think it was inappropriately communicated. If your intent was different, then I think it was inappropriately communicated. But I appreciate you bringing it up, but I took it as a negative approach. So.
Okay, well, I apologize if I hurt some feelings, and I presented it incorrectly, so I will try to, well, I have one more meeting after this, so.
All right. Director update. So now we have some department updates tonight. What do we got, Brian?
President Bender, since acknowledging this is a special meeting and we have a kind of an expedited agenda this evening, I want to kind of forego department updates. We'll do those on a monthly basis. I did want to give one update. You kind of touched on it earlier. I think each of the directors about the PSOM notice that was issued early yesterday evening, late yesterday afternoon. Just want to give a quick recap in case any of our viewers hadn't received notices or just needed some clarification. I wanted to emphasize a couple of points. As Director Laliotis had mentioned, the communication level amongst our staff out to our ratepayers, between all of the agencies that are here in Truckee. Also, our partners with NV Energy, Liberty, and our team, quickly mobilizing, quickly communicating. I saw a lot of great updates to the community through the chamber, through the town, through the Office of Emergency Services, through the utilities. Some might even say that, in a, marginally likely PSOM event, that we might be over-communicating. But our goal is to make sure that everyone's aware and they have an opportunity to prepare, especially as we go into the winter months, and not being prepared could have additional consequences. And so we'd rather err on the side of over-communicating and getting that information out there on a timely basis. I want to commend our team for the great job they did there, quickly mobilizing. I also want to touch base on we did have an outage event today, and so we are always kind of faced with the challenge of issuing a notice or a warning, then it not happening, or issuing a notice and a warning to prepare, and then it kind of happening, but it's not related to the original warning. And that's kind of what we experienced this afternoon or earlier this morning. We did not experience intentional de-energization from NV Energy in our service territory. So the California substation in Verdi was not de-energized. What we did experience is an overload or a breaker trip at the local substation that controls our 607 transmission line, feeds Donner Lake and Tahoe Donner. That trip, due to a fault or an overcurrent of some nature, we did an investigation, didn't really see what caused it or don't have a report out on that yet. But because we were in PSOM protocol with NV Energy, they did do their due diligence, inspected the lines physically. Our crew did the same with the substations and our infrastructure. It was only out for a few hours, I believe, but it did have kind of the optics that perhaps the PSOM was actually triggered. It was not. We are, however, very lucky in the terms of the PSOM because the rest of NV Energy's Foothill customers did experience a PSOM. So the areas out of Carson, Incline Village, South Lake, even going down as far south into Vegas and Mount Charleston, I believe. So they had several PSOM events. They evaluated the weather and the conditions in the Verdi, kind of that canyon there and their infrastructure, and made a determination to cancel our PSOM warning sometime this, I think around 3 o'clock this afternoon. So we were under PSOM advisory for about 24 hours. We had an outage for a few, but it was unrelated. And so all things being said, I really wanted to commend all of the teams, our operations team, the linemen on our staff, the transmission crews for NV Energy who quickly mobilized. I think there's a lot of successes there. We will do a debrief, and we always learn from all these events. What additional communication or points of clarification we can offer the community or our own team. So just want to, across the board, everyone did an amazing job there. And I'll stop there.
Since you guys have 3 people, I'm actually going to take off.
Okay. Awkward. All right, we have a few items on the consent calendar tonight. Oh, we actually just have one. Item number 8, consideration appointing the GM as district's negotiator for the Donner Lake Reserved Water Agreement with Truckee Meadows Water Authority. Just one item. Any public comment on the consent calendar? All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment. Any questions from my fellow board members?
None from me.
None.
Okay.
I'll move the consent calendar.
I'll second that.
All right, motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Director Laliotis,
Yes.
Vice President Finn,
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes.
The record will note Director Aguera and Director Harris are absent.
All right, thank you. Okay, it takes us to our first action item tonight, number 9, consideration of adopting Resolution 2024-21, approving the execution of a power sales contract with Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems.
Good evening, President Bender, members of the board. I'm just talking slow while this thing loads.
All right.
How was your day? There are a lot of pictures in this one, so,
Oh, it's a big one.
yeah.
How many megs is it?
I don't know.
Scott knows those.
It looks like gigs. It looks like 1 point something
I
gigabytes.
see 1,949 KB.
Oh, okay. All right. So it's
Yeah, it's spinning. But, it's really exciting, that's why,
yeah. You want
this is all part of it.
Building in anticipation.
Well, I can kind of jump into anyways, and there's a couple of introduction slides on here once it opens up, and one of the reasons why I want to put them in there, and they're, in many ways, they're like routine to our business, but it's, power supply stuff essentially. But since we don't often invest in new plants, I figure it might be wise to have some reminders to remind us all of what we're doing here, related to power supply, obviously. So one of the things, again, while it's loading, that I just want to kind of point out for everyone's understanding is the way power supply really works for utility is there are node prices where we are buying power every hour of the day. Then there's also a factor of where we own generation or we have investment generation, and it's selling power every day. In a sense, you could look at it and go, well, every month there's these generators that make us revenue by selling into a market, powering all sorts of folks in the balancing authority they're in. Then there is another balancing authority, or the same one, doesn't make a difference, that we're in, that we're receiving energy from. This one's almost like a credit, and plus the cost to run it. And this one's like a cost. It's the same as your home bill, except then you add them up. At home, we're only going to get a bill that all of what we received, we never sold anything back. Every business, same thing too. But as utility, there's an action of buying and an action of selling, if that makes sense. So I also want to make sure I point that out. So everyone understands the concept of like, I think all the time where people will wonder, does that power supply even come to our grid or not? It doesn't really work that way. It's more around a function of you're powering a grid. So I'll jump right into the slides here. Fortunately, I kind of started the first two are a little background. So what basically we're doing as utility is we're always forecasting our load into the grid to figure out how much load we need. And the main topic of this conversation tonight is why we should very carefully consider investing into a new generation source. In this case, a gas plant. So we're putting our load forecast into the grid for every 15 years, 5 years, 1 year, and 1 week ahead. Those are always being updated quite regularly. Every year, certainly, you're updating them. That's guaranteed. But even every week, you're updating them, and that's the load forecast. And like in our case, UAMPS is our scheduler. They're scheduling our power supply into the grid. They're scheduling our load into the grid. So a balancing authority will say, oh, I see there's whatever, 10 utilities, and they each put their load in for tomorrow at noon. We see we need 100 megawatts of power running to power the grid tomorrow. That's how they turn power plants on. The way they convince power plants to turn on is by putting a price signal and going, will you turn on for $10 a megawatt? No. Yes. The ones say no, we don't, now they're still deficient. Will you turn on for $50? It goes up in increments, whatever. And then enough turn on, say yes, the grid is cleared, and now it actually pays at the clearance price, whatever the highest number is. But that's how they get power plants to turn on and power the grid. So other things about utilities here for us, we're always buying energy from generators either owned by others outside our balancing authority or in our balancing authority, or we're even our own generators. In Truckee's case, we don't have a generator in Truckee, but for most utilities who do have a generator in their territory, they're also just selling the power into the greater grid. They're not even powering their own town. That's not really how you do it anymore. Many years ago, you certainly did, but not anymore. If you go back 100 plus years ago, that's the only way you had a utility. You had to have a generator in town because there was no other choices. But once the grid grew, you put them into the whole grid to run together and have that transactional thing every month of money, of how they turn on, turn off, for meeting your loads. As a utility, it's very important that you have sufficient generation to cover a portion of your load for each hour of the day. You don't need to own enough generation to cover all your needs every hour of the day. It could be very wise. If the markets are very, very expensive, you'd love to have your own generation. If the markets are sky high, if the markets are very cheap, you'd rather just buy from the markets. So the point is you want a balance. You're always going to want a balance for every hour of those days. And the last note on this one is around a scheduler. Somebody has to physically put that load into the grid so the balance authorities know, and also to tell the generators to turn on for every hour of the day. Even if you're just scheduling from the market, you're still balancing your loads. That's what a scheduling agent's really doing. So as I mentioned earlier, those system operators on the balancing authorities, so NV Energy, CAISO, Pacific Core, these different balancing authority agencies, sometimes called RTOs, regional transmission operators, they're the ones seeing the loads and then telling what generators turn on, incentivize them to turn on financially to balance the load of the grid. And they're all set out those node prices. Again, they change the prices constantly to get generators turn on and turn off. So like when a price does go negative, it's the grid saying we have too much power. You have to pay us to stay on. They don't all turn off then because there's other reasons they want to stay on at times. I'll get into that later if you want me to, but it's gets a little complicated. So simply put, when you look at energy, for every hour of the day, really even 5 minutes, there is a physical, financial, and contractual balance that's always happening. And so that's kind of how we get to the background of why we need certain kinds, a variety of generation types to meet our loads. And I also want to point this out, and I might want to bring it up again in the end there too. Right now, uh-oh.
Apparently, we didn't pay the bill.
Brian. Okay, yeah, so right at this moment right now, we have about 30 megawatts of power generation projects that are in the hopper, in the queue, that are in some stage of development right now. It's 2 wind projects, 2 geothermal projects. They're pretty small, but 2 of them with an opportunity for them to grow. And this gas plant here, which we're talking about, is 5 megawatts. So the other 25 are other projects in different stages of development right now. Okay, so from this point forward, the slides, you can kind of see the color change there, that darker blue. This is the slides that UM's put together for us. And let me see if I wiggle this helps. These are the slides from UAMS. They did a really good job, and it's also important to understand that our membership with UAMS, what they're doing is they're aggregating the power supply needs for all their membership. So I just took their slides and cut and pasted them, because similar to us, we did a little before they did, a number of months before they did, coincidentally. They also did an IRP to figure out what do they need for the membership. And this picture here kind of shows a lot of it, and shows existing. They have, you see the power plants they have there now, let's call it 900 megawatts of power plants available that they're owning, operating, running. But their optimal really would be closer to 1,600 megawatts. So basically, they're seeing a deficiency for the members and in generation sources, and this is also why a variety is important. Solar, wind, gas, solar, storage. You need the variety. And also, always remember, you got to meet every hour of the day. It's very important, or else you have other financial issues. So there's only, so of the plants that are available, the 2 plants that they're looking to right now to build, there's a peaker plant and there's a baseload plant.
It doesn't like your slides. It's like shutting down the laptop.
This one's new to me. I've never seen it do that before. Okay, so there's a peaker plant and there's a baseload plant. So I circled the peaker plant, the location, and also I changed the peaker to red, because that's not the one that Truckey's looking into. Although I am a little happy because by them looking at 2 different plants at once, there's a scale of magnitude that does help with cost. What we're looking into is the baseload plant.
I think that might, oh, that one.
Okay, oh, thanks, Scott, appreciate it. Okay, so now there's a peaker load and baseload plant. The baseload plant is what we're looking into. A peaker plant is something, and to be frank, we actually do need a peaker plant as part of our, I'll show a little bit later, but I don't think this is the right one for our way they plan to run it. I don't see it's quite right for us and what we need. Remember, Truckey's a little bit unique. Our load, we peak in the wintertime. Most people are peaking in the summertime. So when we need things, I want to be very careful about, don't just buy everything that's out there. Make sure it fits our shape of our load, that hourly shape as well. But the baseload plant, it would actually match quite well with our system. So I'll spend more time on that than with the peaker, but I'm happy to answer whatever questions I can. That baseload plant is a 360 megawatt plant, of which we're interested in 5.25 megawatts of that. So it's a pretty small percentage, yeah, but still, it helps our system. This is the peaking facility, so I made it right up top. I'm going to kind of skip it because it doesn't apply here, but I wanted to make sure everyone could see it because I thought UM did a great job with their slides. And I also didn't want to just delete it because there is a scale of magnitude that is beneficial to all these projects, even down how you finance them and everything. And this one, they hope to have it on commercial operation plant in 2029. Oh. So that actually is kind of important. Now, the combined cycle plant, the one that we want to talk more about tonight, so it's located in Power County, Idaho. It's 360 megawatts. It's a one-by-one frame-style combined cycle plant. That's like a jet engine, basically. That's to put it simply. It's a very, very efficient system. It's a gas turbine and a steam turbine. So basically, it's just imagine an engine making steam that turns a turbine blade that then spits out power, almost like a big alternator in your car, in a sense. It's absolutely capable of burning a hydrogen mix that those are coming down the road. I personally think they're inevitable. The concept of making hydrogen from wastewater and everything else with excess solar is like a no-brainer. Tell me how that's cheaper than drilling for oil and drilling for gas and putting in pipelines. It's inevitable. I will give you one example of that, though, that really opened my eyes to this. I don't think I told you this before. I might have. If I did, sorry already. One thing about a gas plant, the reason why you can't just convert a gas plant straight over to a hydrogen plant with a different fuel source, which obviously you wouldn't put diesel in your car. I mean, there's a reason why and different things. But a power plant's the same way, too. If you take natural gas and you were to burn it burn the thing to make the steam to turn the big blade, the shape of the flame might look kind of like this. You blend it with hydrogen or burn hydrogen, it actually becomes wider. And when it gets wider, it becomes further from the source it's trying to burn. Now, this is tiny, but in engineering, that makes a big difference. So just go in there and throw a couple of shims in there, move a little bit closer, problem solved. Yeah, it doesn't quite work that way. But manufacturers now are absolutely seeing this coming, and they are preparing their generators for blends. And a lot of them can absolutely go to 100% hydrogen eventually. But the fact that when they can blend, and by blend, you're talking mostly like in the 45% range is what they're looking at right now. But they're all, when you can do a 45% blend, it is not hard to change that existing burning system over to 100% hydrogen. I say that because it's educational of what's changing in the industry right now. And I do think it's important. And the fact that's on here shows even the technology they're going to buy, it basically has to be capable of a hydrogen blend, or else many folks won't even build them anymore. Or we're encouraging everyone to build these because we see the writing on the wall down the road of what we're going to be doing with our fuel sources. This plant, the baseload plant, is looking at 2031 of a in-service date. So I will take a quick moment to explain the process of a power plant here and timeline, mostly because it doesn't matter if it's solar, wind, gas, it doesn't matter what it is. The timeline's about the same. What you're going to come up with first are these cluster studies. So in 2025, the first dotted thing there, cluster study, that's where you're going to a balancing authority, a CAISO, even a giant like a PG&E or an NV Energy, Pacific Core, some of the real big ones, and you're saying, we all see you have a deficiency in your grid, and so we want to submit a generator into your grid. And you're doing the math to say financially it can make us money, it can make money for that developer. Let's just say it was me, the developer. I see there's a gap here, so I'm bidding in. The gap's not hard to find if you're in that business. But you have to submit into their studies of plants, and there will be if you recall, Mason came to visit, he showed the nation this huge list of power plants in design. What they're really doing is not they're in design, they're being studied. And a lot of them won't get built. But that list of them, one of the problems with that's really a pain in the neck is everyone has to be studied, but not everyone will get built. But imagine if every plant took 1 month to study and you did 12 a year, well then that's all you can do. So let's say I want 24 studies per year, just double your staff. It's not that easy, as we all can figure out in about 2 seconds. So cluster studies take time. So it's really important, if you think you need the product, you need the energy plant, you want to get in the cluster study early. And that's kind of what tonight is all about. We have a window of opportunity to put in for a cluster study with Pacific Core, and then they're going to do their work, and then they're going to tell us what comes next for that. When they say go, when they say yes, we've already submitted them and talked to them, and now we're waiting a moment. They could say go tonight. We basically have 30 days to tell them, yes, we want to go. That's why we have to come to our boards early and get permission early to even consider this, because we wouldn't have enough time, and also luck of the draw, whatever you want to call it, December. It's like, come on, are we all really working on December, the end of December, and having board meetings? So the timing is not ideal, but this is the business. So once you do a cluster study, then you go into an interconnection scope, and in your design and your permitting, this is no different than like building a house and you're designing it, same kind of thing. And then then there's all these interconnection pieces. So there's all these milestones to build a power plant. And this is why you see here it takes, we're saying basically 6 years from start to finish. So start really could be December 1st in the next few days. If it all goes perfectly smoothly, it could be online then. Of those 30 megawatts we have in studies right now, I hope every one of them are built, especially the wind farms. I bet they won't. I'll do everything possible to have them built because they fit our portfolio so well and help our costs stay right where we want them, and as well complying with our RPS for the state of California. But there's no way to tell for sure. They can come back and say, oh, there's a study with a water pattern happening, or water rights are the water rights are too low. The water table is too low. So you can't build that plant there because there is not enough water capacity for cooling. There aren't enough water rights. The farmers in the surrounding radius, they're using that water, and there's just isn't enough of the power plant. All these things can happen easily. So that's why we're coming to you this early. Okay. Related to cost, the base load plant, so it's the second one down there. Again, I'm leaving them all on there. When you can see a peaker plant, peaker plants are expensive. They don't run very much. That's the entire point. They don't even have to be all that efficient because they don't have to run that. The goal is they're not running hardly ever. But when the grid needs them in a pinch, they come on. It's very important we have peaker plants capable of doing what we call black start. That means they can turn on in about 20 minutes. Some plants, you take some older ones, like some of the old coal plants and whatnot, they take days to heat up. You got to fire them up early, and they take just days to heat the tank up to start making the steam. But you can design and engineer new ones that can come on really, really fast. And one of the reasons we need those are because of solar. Solar and wind, they're dipping constantly, they're always changing. The sun rises, the sun sets consistently, but that means the grid's gonna slam on, then slam off every day. And you're gonna want a gas plant that can turn on quickly, that isn't idling all day long, just waiting to run. It turns on in 20 minutes to help stabilize the voltage of the grid. But that's not the plant we need for Truckee right now. Some of the members of UAMS, they absolutely do though. The base load plant, what we're looking at, and you see the cost there, we're hovering around that, it's called $70 a megawatt hour range, which fits in well with our costs now. It's right there. I certainly wouldn't tell anyone gas plants are dirt cheap and you're putting no energy at $30. It just doesn't work that way. But $70 in today's dollars is about what it'll cost.
What's the CF stand for? The CF 40%, CF 80%? Do you recall?
Yes, capacity factor. Someone whispered over there.
Capacity factor,
Yes,
okay.
the capacity factor of the plant. So that's running at 40% or 80%. Over the course of a year, it used to be a gas plant would be running in the 80s and 90% across a year. Nowadays, like this past year with good hydro running, you saw up in those graphs, kind of show some of the board meetings there. Some of the gas plants, even NEBO that we invest in, it didn't turn on for months. I mean, I know gas plants that didn't turn on until July and August because they weren't needed. They're the last one the operators turn on. They turn on the least efficient ones last. So, but you need them available, like right now, but you don't need them most of the year. So good water year, the gas plants don't run much. Similar, another price thing here, kind of showing some data. I'll kind of skip it, but you get the idea of where the price of these things are. And they're even showing like coal and nuclear where the prices sit in those ranges. Sorry. So gas is still cheaper than nuclear and even cheaper than coal, depending where you look at the averages, when you can see them. But, so. Okay. So for the market comparison, if we don't invest in, so think of that $70, call it $69, $70 energy. If we don't invest in that, what right now the market's showing is we're talking about between $160 to $220 if we just went to the markets and whatnot. The markets are very volatile. In some months, they are extremely cheap. So like, for example, in April, they could be 30 or 40 bucks and not 160. But the gas plant's probably not running in April. So when the gas plant is running, it is going to be more expensive to buy that same gas energy on the grid when we have no choice to balance the grid and need it. So the price of Do you want to pay $70 or do you want to pay, I'll do the lowest, $160? Well, you don't want to pay the $160, obviously. I put a big star on this one to make sure I didn't forget to talk about interconnection again. So I mentioned that earlier, so I won't go into weeds on it again. But as part of the interconnection, what they said, you have to saying it can come as early as December 2024. These slides came out maybe a month ago. And what kind of happens next is you're going to need evidence of site control. So we are working on site control right now with UAMPS. That's the main topic. I was with them the past 2 days and just got back this evening. And that was one of our main things we're looking into. You have to give a $5 million deposit. I'm really happy that the industry is doing that now because there's so many plants that were basically throwing their hat in the ring to build a plant with nothing down for money. And so it's like, oh, we're studying this one. I'm like, that's never going to happen. But they still have to study it, and I understand they got to study it. But the one you say, but we have one that's real. Like we have this solar plant, the solar plus storage. Ours is real. We can build right now if you just give us approval. They're like, sorry, here you are on the list, and there is no way to climb the list. So say anyone who wants in, it's $5 million, and if you back out, if we come back to you and say we studied it and we spent $100,000, and the person go, ooh, you know what? Never mind, we're out. They're going to say, then you owe us 9 times that $100,000 that we already put into it. It kind of helps get the people that aren't taking this stuff seriously and get them a little out of the way, which is kind of nice. The study for interconnection, they're about a year to study them. It's possible they can come in faster. It's also possible to come in a little bit longer. In my experience of these in my career nowadays, I definitely see them as about 1 year. I've seen them come in at 10, 11 months. Other ones I've seen come in about 13, 14 months. So year average is very accurate, I'd say. And if we don't start this cluster study, it doesn't open again until January 2026. And that's only if there isn't much for them to do between now and January 26. So you'll be waiting at least a year before you can even hop in the ring again. All right, so major milestones. If this thing is approved by every member of the 360 megawatts, or about 85% of it, what happens next is we have to very quickly figure out the land piece of it and then get into the engineering design. Very important pieces. Submit air permits. That's just because it's in a state that's not California. Believe me, there are still air permits. They happen all the time. And there's a lot of things. Any gas plant that's running, any plant that's running, period, there are air testing happening all of the time. They have to do it. Where they tell you you're doing good and bad changes a little bit here and there, but they're always testing it. Then there's a lot of permits with the states and the counties, and then you have to buy all this long lead time equipment, the transformers and all different gear and building grounding grids, and it's all stuff you hear about substation projects too. They all take time. You pour a big concrete pad, it's got to dry and cure first before you put the big equipment on there. You build a building around these things. There's lots of pieces to it. The transmission path is another piece, because once a generator goes online, doesn't matter what type it is, and you even say the same for a load. You want to add a load. I'll use an example of a data center. They're very popular right now. When you add a data center, so either power coming in from a generator or more load being pulled into a grid, there's a whole path being studied from that start to finish to ensure to see what it will do to your system, how it will impact your system, and what changes it do to your system to allow that thing to come online. It's a lot of energy modeling nowadays and whatnot, but it's by no means simple. And they're factoring in all the requests they have into this thing and without telling everyone what the requests all are and saying, yeah, I can't tell you why you have these upgrades, but you do. So that's why it takes so long. So key terms. So the power sales contract, I guess I'll read through them. But the power sales contract, it contains terms related to propose a new natural gas project. So the contract that we're signing into, that we're interested and serious about this, it has the whole thing from start to finish, cradle to grave. The cost, you can't just back out early. You have to have certain things with bonding, showing you actually can finance this thing. You have to ensure that each member is going to set their rates able to pay for this. You can't just keep low rates and not pay for it and dump it on someone else. You can't do any of those things. There's effects and negative impacts of all these things if you do it. There's a lot of background, a lot of things you have to, all the studies to show. These are all critical pieces of any power plant project of any type. More of those here too, just more contractual things to get to the financing. So even to find a financier, which UAMPS has already found some financiers. They're working on that. So they actually have made some very good progress with that already in preparation. But also, they know what they're doing in power plants, so that wouldn't be surprising. And then, of course, getting all the project participants with the financing piece and how they're going to pay for all that is very important as well. For Truckee, I really don't see us having any issues with that. I don't know any members of UAMPS that would have an issue with it, frankly. Even how our rates are structured, like how we added a PCA, we add these things, we're really showing folks that we know how to do this business, which is very important, because financiers won't just give you money if you can't show you know how to do the business. More key terms. This is going to be very similar to the NEBO plant, but actually, for light background, the NEBO plant was built in 2004 when it came online. That came out of the energy crisis of 2001, 2002, where Truckee certainly felt that. I'm sure you guys know the history there. And that's what spun up NEBO quickly. Truckee didn't actually get into NEBO until, I think, 2007 or something like that, because one of the members of UAMPS left, and an opportunity for us to buy into it. So this would be one of the first one of these any of you have ever really seen from the beginning. They're just not done very often anymore, but they need to be, or we wouldn't be here right now talking about it. But Horse Butte and Symbeo, whatever you saw in those, it's similar to that. It's not much different. For the Horse Butte wind farm and the Veo heat recovery generator, also non-carbon emitting. There has to be 85% subscription for UAMPS, or they can't actually proceed. So every member needs to fill that in, or it won't go any further. As an FYI, so for the way UAMPS works is once you have a deal, once there's a project and it's progressing, what kind of happens next is they create a power committee. There's a committee, and folks on the committee are who vote and make changes and do all sorts of things with that every month. And that's why the ones that I sit on behalf of Truckee, I got to be there to make certain decisions and votes for. It can be anything from you got to buy a new bearing and it has a lead time of a long time, it failed, or to the land issue, or there's all sorts of things that come up all the time. But you have to have the majority votes and whatnot, same as this board here has to do for many things. So that's kind of how the agreements move forward through UAMPS. So there are ways to leave these projects down the road whenever you want, technically. It's kind of like getting rid of your land. It's not necessarily encouraged, but if you, like as in California with RPS, there is a chance where we might say we want to divest ourselves once no longer when you can't have any more carbon emitting plants in California. We might want to get rid of some of these. It's far easier to get rid of them than to build them, as you saw the timeline there. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. I'll skip some of these because I know a lot of these in the board packet, you would have read this anyways and seen a lot of them, and it's a lot of words to go through. Just kind of show that basically there's a membership that has to buy into the plant, and then there's all these planning phases that come with it. And right now we're trying to get to that planning phase. Again, the 85% thing is very important, and resolutions are very necessary to make these move forward. Oh, and that PMC there, that's the project management committee, and so it can terminate by a supermajority vote. So I want to point out to just say, UAMPS won't go, we're stopping the project. It doesn't work that way. The power committee they put together of the members, now they might say, we're stopping the project for whatever reason everyone's talking about, but it won't be UAMPS just backing out or terminating it. It doesn't work that way. It's the members on the voting on the committee that will decide each step of the project. I'll skip this one. It's very similar to what we just talked about. Also, very similar to, there are certain targets that we're shooting for. So, for example, in that, let's say you saw that range of the levelized cost of energy, LCOE. Let's say it was going from whatever, $60 to 120, and after all this work, we found out to interconnect and this work, it was coming in at $200. The management committee would have a discussion and decide, do we want to proceed or not? clearly we wouldn't all be thrilled about anything going so expensive that it's bad for us. We'd probably back out of it pretty quick, all of us. Again, this is for UAMs, kind of just make sure there's something they want to have clear on theirs. We're asking for a 0 on the peaker plant in Millard County and 5.25 megawatts in the Power Base County, the Power County base load plant. I've shown you mine. In fact, I have it in a couple slides to bring it up. This is something that UAMs is pointing out to us to share as part of our slides that they wanted everyone to see. This is the red line up top. This is our load forecast going out. And like, as you can see, by 2045, they're saying we could hit somewhere around 42 to 50 megawatts of load. That's how we, in our peak, all-time peak here is 37 megawatts for reference. So we're growing. Our resources, the lines below there to meet those, as you can see, today it's not too bad. We're kind of a little more exposed than we'd like to be in 2024, but getting worse. And if you look at the far end of the resources, the blue line goes away, that's actually the Nebo plant, when the gas plant, that would probably go offline somewhere out then, it would reach the end of its useful life, just getting old. So you got to replace some of these or you're going to have financial issues. This is a slide that UM's created for us because they did their IRP, and for the members, as part of the IRP they did, they're showing where we would like to be. So seeing there as resources come online. So again, you can see Nebo coming offline at the very end, at the bottom. But you see like the UMs, you see that 2029 one there, it's the first green bar coming on. There's a bunch of resources in here that as they come online, we get closer and closer to meeting our load. One thing here that's really interesting to note that shows a major difference in our business is you can see how it surpasses our load down the road. We're actually having more generation than even to meet our load. That's how you meet the RPS and how you run these businesses well. You have to, if you design a solar array to meet what you need across the year, great. But that means it was cranking in the summer and doing not much in the winter. Across the year, you met your RPS and your requirements there. But you can't throttle up and throttle it down. They're not firm resources. You can't shape them. They're just going to put out when they put out. So that's why having a variety of resources and oversizing them a little bit is a very smart move. That's why you add not putting solar on a battery plant nowadays would be very, very odd for anybody. It wouldn't make a lot of financial sense. Now, I'll be clear, like in here, they're calling out a nuclear plant in the purple, and that's not until 2034. That doesn't exist yet. This is them saying, we're shopping, we're looking for the whole membership. We don't even know yet, but they're filling in to look to the future. I'll skip a lot of this because a lot of this you heard as part of our IRP, but as you can see, what some of their staff is forecasting for us is seeing a load growth of 1.7%, up in that second bullet, the first sub-bullet. Yeah, that's true. We're actually seeing growth a little more than that right now. So kind of exciting. Nice to see load growth for money and financials, how we pay for all this stuff. But still, growth means we have to invest in more things, more generation sources. They mentioned like Hunter there, if applicable. We don't invest in Hunter. That's a coal plant. We have nothing to do with it. So, but again, I just want to keep all these slides on here. Even though the last one is a MIG. A MIG is a member generator. We don't have any MIGs as of now. There's nothing in our community. No PUD-owned solar or gas generators or anything like that. And we don't have any plans for any gas generators, certainly in Truckee. You see the timeline. It wouldn't. It's the wrong year to look into that. Solar, we're certainly looking into, as you well know, we're looking into that. And actually, as a note about that, we would size a solar array and a battery array very, very carefully, trying to avoid the interconnection process of 6 years there to build it. You can't make it too big. You got to be careful how you design the work system just right. So one way I would simplify it and say, we're trying to keep it behind the meter so it never leaves our grid and keep it only within grid. You wouldn't want to oversize it because then you'd overvoltage your grid and really damage it. So anyways, this one, more things on here, and some of these things like the IPP plant, we're not in that plant. Hunter, so the first bullet and second bullet, those are coal plants. We have nothing, we're not involved in them at all. Nebo, we are involved in that one, and soon in line is 2044. At that point in time, it'd just be a very old plant. If it makes it that long, it'd be awesome. I probably won't, but that'd be impressive. And then, of course, you see like that HB1 software upgrade. So that's one, again, a lot of these, I didn't even talk about one earlier, frankly. That's an upgrade to the Horse Butte Wind Farm software that will have it put out more power. It allows it to just spin a little bit differently and give a little more power. Extremely cheap way of getting more energy in dollars per megawatt, dollars per kilowatt, if you want to calculate it. So those are things we are very involved in with them and getting more resources. Fremont Solar is right below the Horse Butte one, and we're looking at that one. And then those new ones that they're considered being an important word on the bottom, the peaker plant, the base load plant, a new nuclear, and also TBD, dispatchable. Again, these are all looking way out ahead and just what we're always hunting down as part of the membership there. All right, we're getting close to the end here. One thing I want to snap in here real quick with a quick picture is just, this is the IRP graph that I kind of manage and keep an eye on for Truckee. It's how I see a load forecast for how much energy we need to buy. All I'd point out with this one is saying that green line, that's showing the past, and there's a dotted line in the middle there where it says actual versus forecast. And what I wanted to just point out here is anywhere we see like that grayish white, the spaces in the top, that's where we're filling in with the spot market. And if you look backwards versus looking forward, and looking forward, I only have it out till 2027. I just didn't want to make it, I want to make it so you can see a little bit here. We're getting more and more exposed. Sometimes it's contracts that are expiring, and we're not, and they're getting rid of the plant. The hydro farm's getting old, or whatever. The solar farm's going out of commission. We're losing generation sources. We have to replace them. So, in the exposure to the markets, you got to be careful, because we all went through that in December and January of 22 and 23. There, you got to be careful of how exposed you are. Some months, it's fine to be very, very exposed, and we're careful with that. Other months, you don't want to be. December and January months, you don't want to be exposed anymore. September, you don't want to be exposed at all. But in Truckee, it's not a big deal, because it's not a big peaking load for us. In fact, it's a very low month for us. So again, there's an opportunity for Truckee to take advantage of these things. But the point here is, just make sure I'm clear with it, we have too much exposure, and we got to start locking it in. And some of those wind farm projects, geothermal ones, they won't be online by 2027 even. We're doing our best to get them online faster, but it is what it is. They take time. Okay, for fiscal impact, looking at the cost of what we know today at about $69 per megawatt hour, that would probably be around $2.9 million per year. I basically shaped that around the Nebo gas plant to go, if I shaped it similarly, then that's about what it would cost per year. But also, you remember, if it's running more efficient than Nebo, well, you'd run it even more than Nebo, clearly. So it's hard to say this early, but that $70 about fits well in our portfolio. So, and again, of course, we won't know all the fees and costs until we finish the studies, and you can't finish studies until we start in the studies. That's kind of why we're here tonight. So the recommendation is adopt the resolution 24-21 approving the execution of a power sales contract with Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems. And that should be the last slide.
All right. Excellent. Thank you, Jared. Any public comment on this action item? All right. Seeing none, close public comment. Let's buy some gas plant
I know,
power.
right?
Or, no, we're going to say
Look
yes
at
to
it.
start
We're
looking
gonna
at
say-
it. Yeah. Yeah.
I have just a few, just more detail. You touched on that these new plants will be hydrogen compatible from the get-go. They're being built to be able to burn a mix at least, and easily enough to get to 100% at a future date, which we don't know yet. Are there any stipulations about how that hydrogen gets to be produced for that plant?
That is a question that we've all been asking for the past, everyone in the power industry has been asking for the past about 2 years. There were a lot of things it's a state definition for California anyways, and it's also a federal definition of where it comes from. I'm from New England, and so in Boston there, it was always weird there because we could invest in a power plant in New Hampshire that wasn't green in Massachusetts, even though you could get there in 30 minutes and drive and see it. And it's just that these definitions, what they are, it changes constantly state by state. So there is no defined definition of hydrogen just yet. There are, some people talk about black hydrogen, where I think you're making it from nuclear or maybe from coal. So you take gas and strip it. I think it's purple, which is a nuclear, I think. And then, of course, you can call it the green hydrogen. So there's a variety of sources coming, but these things have not been ironed out yet, and everyone's waiting for a definition across the whole country.
Okay, so that's a no. Because obviously, if it's, the creation of the hydrogen is a horrible polluting process, that's not getting us anywhere.
That's right. Yeah.
We're going backwards. And obviously, I'm not a fan of fossil fuels for anything at this point, but I also absolutely understand that this is where we're at. We can get what we can get, so we're not going to let the lights go off, and we're not going to, again, while I'm not a fan of fossil fuels, I'm even less of a fan of the open power market pool, because then we're paying really high prices for also potentially really filthy energy. So I think just for those sort of common sense measures, and then to push going forward to make sure that the hydrogen markets are green, just like we're doing with the energy markets, that we are down with renewable projects. That's what we want to see more of. That's what we want our co-ops to focus on more of. And I believe that UAMPS is becoming more responsive to those sorts of requests from their members. And I think that our role is going to be the same in emerging hydrogen markets, is that we're only, our little PUD, our little baby PUD, market power that we have. I think as long as we continue to use it to show what we really want and to push for what we really want, even if we don't actually get it at this moment in time, because reality, I'm supportive of this contract, with all of those stipulations. This would provide us with 5 megawatts, which is approximately what percentage of our projected need, say, in 2030?
It would give us around, in 2030,
12%?
Yeah, about that. I was doing the quick math, yeah. 'Cause it would probably give us around, call it between 25 and 30,000 megawatt hours a year of energy. I can't, no way to say for sure how it's run, but that range.
Yeah.
And by 2030, our power, today, last year we bought about 175,000 megawatt hours of energy. It'd probably be getting close to that, call it 190, 200,000 megawatt hours. So of the 25 to 30, hitting you about the 200,000, so about 12%.
Fair.
I will point out one thing as an FYI. So one of the plants that UAMPS has operated for quite a long time is the Intermountain Power Project. That's a coal plant.
I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah.
We don't buy anything from it. We have nothing to do with it. In many ways, I wish we did today, because what's happening right now is it's being switched over to natural gas, ready to run hydrogen.
Yeah.
And the biggest off-taker from that plant is LADWP. So they clearly want to go that direction.
Make it, yeah.
When these larger plants switch over to hydrogen, it becomes an economics race of switching them all quickly. Because why would you pay a premium for the fuel source? And a plant like these kind of plants, they can run $11 million per year in operating costs. The big chunk of it is the fuel.
Right.
If you can make the fuel from not
Leftover sunshine.
Exactly. It's a
Just
race.
going to get wasted.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's it for the moment. I'm sure there's little things in here, but I'm going to let some other directors say things.
No, good questions. Thank you, Krista. I guess one of my concerns, obviously, is the 9X, factor, and potentially if this project doesn't move forward. I mean, I see you provided an example of perhaps what our liability might be. I guess, is that theoretical or does that have some basis, the numbers you provided here?
The example I can give, I think it's a real world example. So like to apply to an interconnection fee, do an interconnection study, it's not much money. It's usually about 40 grand. You never really know exactly what it is, but a lot of places they cap it at 40 grand even. So it's not a ton of money to study it, but that's spread across a lot of members. How far down the rabbit hole do you go before you back out of it? Well, it really depends. I mean, so. And if you do something like a land purchase, that's separate than the investment there, you can probably sell it for even more money, especially if you get permits, that's worth even more money. So you make your money back that way. So us at 5 megawatts out of 360, and if you add in the 5 megawatts out of, I can say 200 out of 560, adding two of them together, yeah, we're a very small portion. So we're not very exposed to what could happen. And it's only 9x of what you've put into it with the agency that's working on it. So I'll use the example of Pacific Core. If they've put in $100,000 of man hours to study it, and then we back out of it, that times 9 divided by all the members, that's where I kind of come up with some of those numbers. It's not big dollars.
Well, we're fronting, what, I think you had a term up there, 5 million for the study, but that's money that's being fronted by all of us, right?
Not exactly. So that's actually, I mean, yes, but it's like UMS has to put in a deposit, but they don't start taking out of that 5 million. I mean, you could, if you all approve our building, sure, maybe then, but it's just a deposit or a letter of credit, essentially, you get it back. So it's kind of holds your place in line, so to speak. So I wouldn't think the 5 million would ever actually go down. And truth be told, it's actually 10 million because it's two plants, so they do 5 million each. So that letter of credit, they will get it back if it doesn't proceed.
Right. No, I mean, I agree with Chris's points. I think on its face that this is a good investment. I just, we often talk about these projects with the idea of what's our off ramp, and seems like the off ramp will cost us some money, and I'm just really trying to suss out what that value, what that dollar value is. So I understand it's specific costs incurred by the agencies that are non-UAMPS specific, and our pre-investment should cover the costs of that. I mean, more than likely. So that level of investment from our end and the effort coming from the non-member agencies from our investment is not on the table for that 9x, right?
No, and frankly, at this point in time, we won't even see another bill for this plant until it comes online. So unless we left and someone said, okay, we got to trip exactly what you put into it, your share of it, sure. But we won't see another invoice in this thing until that thing is plant in service, putting out kilowatt hours. 2031, if everything went perfectly smooth.
I'm good for now, Jeff.
Good questions. And so we're writing a letter of credit, the Truckee Downer PUD, for 5 million to UAMPS, correct? Is that
No.
understanding? Okay.
Yeah, no.
I'm misunderstanding.
Yeah, so
Okay.
so if us by signing the resolution and signing that contract, it basically said, now UAMPS goes, we have enough, we have that 85% to 100% subscription. So we have the documents, and now with that, if Pacific Core were to say, we're giving the green light to start this thing on December 1st, they'd say, okay, then we give you, then they're gonna be paying that money for the study. It's gonna be 30 to 40 grand. And then they will submit a deposit, but then it's all UM's doing all that. Again, we're not gonna see a bill until it's done. And then that bill being done will feel like the $70 per megawatt hour that we're getting from it. So they submit all those things in.
Okay.
We're essentially, as a member of UAMPS, prescribing or subscribing to the project to give UAMPS the green light to move forward. Their project committee and their pooled reserve funds will fund that moving forward. Our cost as a member will be built into our rates once they start generating and selling us the energy. But they need the 85% milestone achieved for the underwriters and bond writers to fund the project.
And just one more, just follow up on Tony's off-ramps. There are off-ramps there that aren't going to cost us anything if for somehow we magically fill up our portfolio with everything we need before this plant comes online.
So let's say, for example, every plant that we're looking into, they all get built. It would get kind of weird in like in a really good way, because it would say, well, you're covered with your wind projects, the ones you already have, the new ones, your solar projects, the ones you already have, the ones being built right now for us that we've been working on for a couple of years with them. If all those are covering our needs, we're not even going to take anything from that plant, which means it just sells into the market. And if the market is at 160 to 220, that slide earlier, and our cost is only 70, it's just you're gonna see the bill just goes, comes down, because they're literally just passing money, but you're making more, you know what I mean? You're making more than you're buying it for, because it's all market-based.
Right.
They don't have to say, well, we only need $70 to cover it, selling to somebody else. They go, Truckee doesn't need it, same with the solar. Truckee doesn't need it because they've met their load. We're gonna sell it, this is why they're a scheduling agent for us, we're gonna sell it to others. They'll check the membership first. If they're all covered, then they're gonna sell it to even others. So like, for example, that's why where LADWP is the biggest off-taker from that coal plant for many years now, but UAMPS owns and operates it. Well, their membership, if some take a little bit of it, it's so big they can't take all of it. So the rest is sold to somebody else. This would be the same as that, but I can guarantee you it's never going to be like, well, we have the solar plant and a wind farm. Why don't you go ahead and stop the wind and stop the sun and run the gas plant? It doesn't work that way. That's why it's hard to say how much it'll even run. And some months it might feel incredibly expensive because it only ran a tiny bit. We go with the hydro all the time. You look at a certain amount of hydro's so expensive, what a waste. And you're like, no, that's because you didn't need it and it barely ran. So the dollar per kilowatt hour looks high. Other months, why is it so cheap? Because it ran so much. It brings the cost down per commodity. So, yeah. But if you have excess, we sell our excess into the grid. But as you can see from here, we don't have excess. So we never really sell anything into the grid. If we looked like way out in the future and we had excess on a certain day for that 1 hour in the day, UAMPS would sell on our behalf to the greater market.
One additional kind of component to that is this particular project, UAMPS, last year we had a lot of discussions about the NuScale project, and they're making attempts to achieve the milestone for the project to move forward, and they couldn't get there. This type of project, they have more than enough subscription for it. It's really about the PUD. Do we want to participate in this project? And there's provisions within the UAMPS pool. If we decided we no longer needed this generation source, UAMPS will subscribe our portion to someone else in the pool so that project continues. This is a baseload project for the entire membership in order to meet their IRP.
Okay. Feeling good?
Looking good. Is there a motion or any other questions?
I'll make a motion that we adopt Resolution 2024-21, approving the execution of a power sales contract with Utah Associated Municipal Power Systems.
I'll second.
All right, motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Director Laliotis,
Yes.
Vice President Finn,
Yes.
President Bender.
Yes.
The record will note Director Harris and Director Aguera are absent.
All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Jared. All the information. Give it a break. The computers.
Yeah.
It's had enough.
Yeah. All right. Okay, next up is item number 10, consideration of approval of a 2024 quarter three power cost adjustment of a small amount credit per kilowatt billed in December 2024 and January 2025. Mike?
Thank you, President Finder, members of the board. Action item 10. First, a little background. The close to $15 million purchase power budget is 48% of the operating expenses of the electric utility. That means it's a very significant amount. And that's the outflow, also known as a revenue requirement, when we go through the rates process and we're talking about budget. And then the inflow to recover, to pay those bills, we utilize rate revenues primarily. 97% of our operating revenues come from the rates. Not anything that you didn't know, but just pointing it out. It's a material item. Purchase power budget specifics, $86 average per megawatt, 174 megawatts purchased. This is the budget, equates to right at $15 million. There's a lot of variability in there, as you know, a lot of various components, including weather, natural gas prices, transmission going well, transmission not going well, maintenance schedules. I believe Evo's offline just for a week there recently. And then our customer demand varies greatly depending on the season and the temperatures and drought and no drought and rain and cold temperatures. We introduced a power cost adjustment new for 2024. This is when our purchase power is below budget expectations. We, instead of looking at that 2 years later during the budget process, we are looking at things quarterly and returning that to our customers if the cost is lower, and then charging a little bit more if the cost is higher. If there's a material significant cost flux greater than 15% per the ordinance that we adopted, we would look at our rate reserves as well. So this is a method of monitoring things on a more frequent basis, and was established in part due to the high volatility of power costs in 2022 and fall of 2022 and January of 2023. Many other utilities have this item. So we have 2 PCA's power cost adjustments approved so far this year. It was a credit the first quarter, a small charge in the second quarter, and we've calculated a recommended for this evening is a 0.009 cents per kilowatt hour credit for Q3. I mentioned earlier in one of the first slides that our purchase power cost is $86 per megawatt. Thank you.
Oh, there we are.
I didn't even,
Or was I just talking loud?
you were talking plenty loud. I
Loud
heard
enough?
you.
Yeah, loud.
So for the year, the budget is $86 per megawatt hour, and that's all in. You know, it's beyond just UAMPS and specific power plants, it's transmission and other costs, $86 per megawatt. But for the third quarter, the budget was actually almost $94. And that's due to varying things. In particular, basically we use a 3-year average looking at average cost and average sources of power because it varies depending on the time of year. Solar is more powerful, but we didn't have it in the past and now we have it, factoring those type of things. But there's also the spikes in demand, particularly in the market when it's really hot. And so that can drive up the market prices. And so there's variability month by month in that budgeted amount. For the year is 86, but just for the quarter was $94. But we did come in under that, and that's why there's a credit recommended this evening. So that's good news for the district and for our district customers. One of the primary drivers of that cost volatility was, or cost underrunning budget is, as mentioned in the previous agenda item, natural gas is a common source of power for power plants. And this is a 5-year snapshot of natural gas prices. And you can see in that high peak there in the middle, fall of 22 and early 2023, that is when we had extreme prices and needed to utilize some rate reserves and introduce the concept of PCA soon thereafter. Current prices are well below historical averages, right in with kind of after the spike during when the Ukraine war started, they have stabilized. So that's one of the primary drivers. This is the calculation for this quarter. It's in the board packets. It was not approved in early November at the November 6th?
Yeah.
November 6th board meeting. So part of the PCA process is to get it approved by the board. It's not in the actual ordinance to do that, but we thought it was best practice and for awareness, and particularly because it's a new item. So we were not able to do it for the month of November's billings, so that the PCA was zero. So to get back in cycle, we're going to cram this into 2 months, or I recommend it. It's a credit, so that's a good thing instead of
Right.
cramming in a charge. But we need to get back in cycle. We need to do it over 2 months. And the reason why it wasn't ready for the November 6th was just the timing of bills and getting and the timing of the board agenda and just getting it in there. Could have done it. I got the information probably right around the day of the board meeting, and we could have gotten it in, but that's how the cookies roll. So we need to catch up. Hopefully that doesn't happen often. And then for a perspective, looking back at Q3, it's about a 4.2% on a cost per megawatt basis favorable credit. And then looking forward in this, when we apply this 0.0096 credit per kilowatt hour, the historical average is right at 615 kilowatt hours on the bills. That's $5.90 in December and January's billings, which is nice. And that effectively is running, the rate increase was about 12%, and we'll be just under 8 with this credit with respect to the quarter. No net effect. We will save for this quarter, we save in budget to purchase power costs for the variability, and we give that back to the customers. And then the recommendation this evening is to approve a power cost adjustment for 2024 Q3 of 0.0096 cents per credit per kilowatt hour billed in December and 2024 and January 2025. With that, I turn it back to President Bender.
All right. Thank you. Any public comment on this item?
Shame.
All right, seeing none, we'll close public comment. And any comments, questions, thoughts?
Sure. Sorry, my brain is not remembering things as well as it should, but I think we talked about this when we first moved forward with this program, but if you can remind me, for instance, when you went back to where you showed the peak, where we had that real vulnerable, spike in cost. Well, I understand like this program can, help us smooth this out, but in the policy, are we trying to balance some of these, I look at what's going on in the last 3 quarters as fairly routine, probably, the fluctuations we're going to see on a routine basis. I guess when we see a fluctuation like, 2022, 2023, rather than going right to a PCA, we have the rate reserve for a reason. And so I guess I want to make sure the board has the opportunity to look at significant deltas that may be occurring and make sure that we're comfortable of how we're going to pass that cost on to our customers, and versus just kind of rubber stamping the PCA and saying, look, we're just going to PCA that spike and move on versus saying, well, wait a minute, that's like $30 on somebody's bill.
Yeah.
And so we have a rate reserve. So when should we start to really say, look, the rate reserve, PCA is great, but I think this is also calls for a rate reserve approach. So just a thought, maybe you guys have some comments on that, or Mike, can you elaborate on the policy, sort of how that
Yes, sir.
process would lay out?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. It's good clarifying question. And if we experience something like in the center of the chart there now, and it ripples to our actual cost, in the ordinance, we do have, in the ordinance, it specifies that if the fluctuation level, the variance is greater than 15%, either direction, we will be exploring options with the board, either to put some of that excess into, if it was favorable, more than 15%, perhaps transferring some money back into rate reserves because we drew from it. And then conversely, if we saw the spike like that previous chart, and it was a material greater than 15%, we would not only bump the threshold of the PCA, but would be talking about, to make the gap, cover that gap, we would be talking about how we're going to address it with the reserves to spread, and how to spread that potentially over multiple years to minimize the impact on our customers.
And just curious, you may have already stated, and I apologize, but what was our flux level for this? I mean, obviously it was negative because it was a credit, but what was the?
Yeah, the percentage, yeah,
yeah,
I was
yeah.
just wanting to see that again. I think it was in there.
So that's about 11%.
1%, okay,
Oh,
okay.
okay.
So roughly $0.015 a kilowatt hour would probably be 15%. Okay.
Yep.
Which, could have a reasonable impact on somebody's bill, so. Okay, no, I think that's great, I apologize, and I appreciate the refresher. I just want to make sure that we're being transparent, that this isn't a process where we just approve significant rate changes to our customers, sort of in this forum, that we
Yeah.
we'll take additional steps when that flux level
Sure.
starts to get into
Absolutely.
Yeah,
the zone of concern, I guess.
yeah.
So, I'm good.
I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good too. I agree with you that having those sort of guardrails on
Yeah,
the ability to just crank up a bill is a good thing to have.
yeah,
So,
15% seems like a
15%
pretty
seems
good.
moderate, yeah. Yeah,
number,
a nice
so.
time to see a little red light going,
Yeah.
maybe.
Ding, ding,
we
ding,
need to-
ding.
Yeah, that's why we have reserves.
And it's absolutely a great discussion. I think just kind of a reminder on that topic, when the board considered this last year, clearly because of the spike we saw at the end of 2022, we were setting kind of an initial, I don't want to call it a pilot, but it was definitely, we were going to implement this program for a year, evaluate its effectiveness and some of the bumps and hurdles we faced. Built into rates is to recover the use of the reserves. So, restoring those reserve balances that we experienced a dip in based on that energy cost spike, put in place the PCA, and then established, not really arbitrarily, but just a good economic financial guess of where that milestone should be in terms of that 15%. In the future, it's at the board's purview to adjust that. The policy was just for transparency, that the community, the ratepayers could see what the process would be. And at some point, the board may want to adjust that. And that's something we can come back, if it comes back from a board recommendation, hey, we want to adjust that, we can definitely do that.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
I'll move to approve the PCA for 2024 Q3 of .0096 credit per kilowatt hour billed in December 24 and January 25.
I'll second that motion.
Motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Director Laliotis?
Yes.
Vice President Finn?
Yes.
President Bender?
Yes.
The record will note Director Harris and Director Aguirre are absent.
All right. Thank you. That's it for all the action items. Now we have quite a few closed sessions. I know Mr. Gross would like me to read them.
Or you could simply state that the board is going to go into closed session under items 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, as stated on the agenda.
I love that.
Thought you might.
As per Council Gross just exactly stated perfectly, we're going to close session for items 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, and 16, as noted on the agenda. And we will be heading into there. Thank you very much, everyone.